Hello, my name is Ann Page. I am president of Friends of the Dania Beach Paul DeMaio Library. We are here this evening in Dania Beach City Hall in the City Commission chambers, and we are going to interview our city historian, Mr. Charles McElyea, 81 years young. He is a businessman, a philanthropist, and an entrepreneur, and he is going to take us on a journey through his many years in Dania Beach as a native. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Mr. McElyea.
Thank you.
Could you please tell me what year you were born and the date of your birth?
February 9th, 1932.
And where were you born?
Hollywood, Florida, 1950 Lee Street.
And when did you move to Dania Beach?
I was old enough to crawl. About 1933.
Now your mother's maiden name was?
Hill.
Hill, and she had a long history in Dania Beach as well.
She was born here in 1913.
And your father, when was he born?
1908 in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
And he migrated here to South Florida, why?
See the hurricane? He heard about the 26 hurricane, devastated Florida. So he didn't have a job, so he hitchhiked down to 28 to see the next one.
And how did he meet your mother?
Well, when he got to Palm Beach, the sheriff said, "What are you boys doing?" And they were hitchhiking. He says, "I don't have any money." He said, "You sleep in the jail. If I catch you out tonight, you'll lock it." So he got up the next morning. He worked to the city of Palm Beach for about a week. They gave him $12. He hitchhiked on to Miami, and by that time he was broke again. So he joined the Coast Guard for a place to sleep. They started chasing the rum runners.
And how did he meet your mother?
She was here in Hollywood. He was just back and forth between Hollywood, hitchhiking one way or the other. Had friends that had cars, and they back and forth to Hollywood.
So after they married, they moved to Dania Beach?
They lived in North Miami for a little while because he was with the Coast Guard there.
So you were about how old when you relocated to Dania Beach?
About just a few months.
What are your early memories of Dania Beach? Can you tell us?
It was just wooded area, pine trees, palmettos.
What type of roads?
They were gravel roads, dirt road. 2nd Avenue wasn't even built there. They called it 19th out of Hollywood. It went up to Dania, all the way up to almost to Sterling Road.
Do you have any idea approximately how many residents lived in Dania Beach when you were a little boy at that age?
Oh, 200 or 300.
As opposed to now, do you know how many we have?
About 30-some thousand.
Now, you told me a story when you were 4 or 5 years old about Amelia Earhart. Could you tell me what happened?
Well, they had the air races in Opelika. Amelia Earhart Field was named later. They were flying the races, and she was practicing. I recognized her plane. It had her name and everything. It was fancy. I was out in the yard waving to her, and she waved back to me. I went and told my mother. I ran in and said, "My mom, Amelia waved to me." She said, "Oh, she couldn't even see you. You looked like a little jar." I said, "Oh," she says, "don't tell me I didn't see her."
And in fact, you developed a lifelong love of flying, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, yes.
Do you think that inspired it?
Well, yes, and a guy come here to town, Joe Basso from New Jersey, brought 3 crop dusters. And she used to call him Aspo. She wouldn't want to say Basso because she didn't like him. So I was at the Aspo field out here on Sterling Road by Robert's Restaurant.
Oh, and that's where you first
I started flying there for him.
Okay. Now, I want to go back to, you had a first cousin who was a founder of Dania Beach, is that correct?
That was my mother's first cousin, Sid Mulligan.
Sid Mulligan. What was he like? Do you remember him?
Vaguely. I remember the last time I saw him, he was going up the steps up here on the house on Sterling Road in 2nd Court. He was just an older guy. He read all the time. He was newspaper smart. Very smart gentleman.
Now, what did you do as a child? I mean, you didn't have television and the things we have today, so how did you entertain yourself as a child in Dania Beach?
Throwing tomatoes at the northern people. The train would come through, they didn't have air conditioning. I'd get between the packing houses and the coal bin. Chung, chung.
Did you ever get caught?
Now I could jump on the roof of the packing house and then over the freight cars and under the track.
So at that time, Dania Beach was known as the tomato capital of the world. Can you explain that? Because some people will be watching this and they don't know what that is.
Well, we had more tomatoes produced per capita than any place in the world. And it was freight car after freight car. I don't remember the numbers, but they went out of here north, and all the packing houses were built on the east side of the Florida East Coast track because everything went to New York. You'd go from here, from Dania to Jacksonville, then go by ship to New York.
Whose idea, do you know, was it?
Flagler.
Flagler was, he had the railroad, but whose idea was it to plant the tomatoes?
Well, it was Martin Frost's father. They come in out of Wisconsin.
Now, your mother worked in the tomato plant, didn't she? And what did she do there?
She was a tomato packer. She packed the gift boxes of tomatoes that were shipped out. She'd do about 400 boxes a day.
She packed 400 boxes of tomatoes. How big were those boxes?
About 20 pounds or so each.
And how much did they sell for, do you know?
I don't know what they sold for. She got 10 cents a box to pack them. So she'd make about $40 a day.
That was a lot of money back then, wasn't it?
A whole lot. Yeah, she only worked seasonal.
And how many people approximately were working in that tomato packing factory?
Well, there was about 7 or 8 in the city of Dania.
7 or 8 tomato packing factories? Really? Where were they located?
Along the east coast, the east side of the East Coast Railway.
How many people approximately do you think they employed during the season?
Depending on the size of the house, some had maybe 50 in each house. Some weren't quite that big. My uncle had one, I think he probably had 20 or 25. He had a smaller house.
Okay. So that was such a big industry. Whose idea was it to start the tomato festivals?
The Methodist church over here. They had a hurricane, blew the church away. They wanted to restore it. All the Mrs. Gregory and all of them across the street and got together and they had Tomato Day. They had barbecues, sold barbecue and everything, built the church back.
And was that the first festival? What year was that?
27, I think, 1927.
And did they crown a tomato queen at that first
Yes,
festival?
she was first queen.
What was her name?
I think it was Lillian Jordan McMillan. She married Mr. McMillan later.
So what was it like as a child to see the tomato festival? Was it like a big parade? Did they have bands?
It was parade. They had a big carnival in this entire lot where we're sitting.
This was a carnival.
This was a ballpark right here.
This used to be a ballpark.
It's a ball field. It was too small, really. We could knock the ball into the packing houses. If you couldn't hit the packing house, you weren't playing.
Could you hit the ball into the packing house?
Oh, yes, many times.
You know, I think Babe Ruth once was a grand marshal of a tomato festival.
He crowned the 48, I think, queen.
Were you here when that happened?
I watched him do it right out in the street there.
That must have been thrilling.
It was.
Now, you know, you've been mayor 6 times in the city of Dania Beach.
Right.
And so I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to want to be a mayor in Dania Beach?
I was a Boy Scout, and I got to be mayor of the Dania as a Boy Scout. At that time, the mayor was a strong mayor, which he run the entire city, police department, fire department, everything. He was boss. I was always a boss, a bossy person. And I watched if you dropped a cigarette butt, I could tell you to pick it up and tear it up, dispose of it. I thought that was great. Keep the city clean. That was always my method, keeping the city looking good.
So you would tell the Boy Scouts to pick up the
Every cigarette
trash?
butts, trash, anything. And that was the acting mayor at that time of the city with the Boy Scouts.
When you were a little boy, do you remember who was the mayor of the city of Dania Beach?
The mayor was George Kelly, Robert Kelly's father.
What was he like?
And a very nice person.
How did they run the city? I mean,
it's quite similar. You had just your commissioners, except you had a strong mayor back then, in which he was actually city manager. We didn't hire a city manager until about 47, 48, when Luther Sparkman was first city manager.
So the mayor acted as the city manager as well. Interesting. Now you have had a lifelong love of automobiles and trucks. And so today, for this interview, you brought 4 vehicles that belong to you and you parked them outside. We're very grateful about that. I wanted to hear the story when you were in the 8th grade and you got your first Ford convertible.
Uh-oh. That was brand new Ford. In the 8th grade, my uncle had a girlfriend, and he went and ordered it from Hollywood Ford for her. Well, I'd been working with my uncle, and then before he come back from World War II, I had a little bit of money saved up. and he bought this car for that girl, and she dumped him. He called me and he said, "You got any money?" I said, "A little bit." He said, "Go down to Hollywood Ford and pick that new car up and give Herb Smiley $75 under the table." Because there was only 2 convertibles in Broward County right after the war. You couldn't buy one. So I had the one of 2 in Broward County.
And you were only in the 8th grade.
8th grade.
That's pretty impressive.
I drove it back to school that day as a big dog. And he says, "No, but girls can ride in it, and the boys will tear it up because they're jealous." So I hauled all the girls around Dania.
Oh, I bet they loved you for that.
Put them up on the back. We'd do the football queen and everything with it.
Things were different back then, weren't they? How did the teachers and the pupils treat each other?
Very good. The teachers didn't take any baloney. They'd hit you with a stick. Whatever they had in their hand, you better look out. Might be a fist. It could be a club. One hit Ralph Sessa so hard that he knocked him senseless. It didn't hurt him.
So that was kind of like corporal punishment. Actually,
Oh, yeah.
they were
Well,
allowed to punish you.
You'd go to jail then today.
You'd go to jail today, but then no.
Oh, Mrs. Dinkins had a paddle about that long with holes in it like this, a 1x4. I said, "What are the holes for? Are they here to go through?" And she said, "I just get over here and I'll show you." So she did.
So I have to ask you, I mean, she was showing you then, but were you ever punished for misbehaving in school?
Oh, every day.
Okay. You told me a charming story about your grandfather Hill and the dictionary.
Oh, yeah. He was self-educated, I guess you'd say. And he'd get the dictionary up there and he'd ask me, and he'd look at it and find a word or something. He said, "What's the definition of this?" I said, "I don't know." He'd let me spell it to him. And he'd learn the definition by reading with me. I'd read to him sometimes.
So could he read? Were you teaching him to read, or?
He read fairly well, but I taught him. We both learned together.
You both learned together. What a wonderful thing. You know, you told me.
I was very good in spelling, but due to that, I was 100 average in the 8th grade, but grammar, I was the poorest one in the class. I used a lot of ain'ts and buts.
You know, when you were a child growing up, there was no air conditioning, was there?
No.
So how did you tolerate the heat?
Didn't know any better. It was nice, it really was. You didn't have all this air conditioned overflow of heat. You didn't have concrete all over the town. It was all marsh and marl and dampness. It was actually nice.
And what about the wildlife? Was there more wildlife then than
Oh, yeah.
What did you used to see?
Oh, you see a bobcat occasionally and raccoons and occasionally a wild hog. Deer once in a while. Deer were further out west. That was rattlesnake country, so I didn't go.
Now, you are an entrepreneur, and you became one at a very early age. For instance, when you were in grade school, you were selling bikes and repossessing them. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
How old were you when you were doing that?
About 14. Teacher said I repossessed one day at lunch hour, and the kid went crying back to the principal. She said, "You're going to be in jail before you're 16. I said, "But I'll be a millionaire by then." That was my ambition. Finally made it.
Did you attain it?
Pardon?
Did you attain your ambition?
Pretty much.
Good. You know, we had quite a few hurricanes in Dania Beach during your lifetime, and I wondered if you could give me some of your recollections of them. For instance, the hurricane of 1926.
I wasn't here, but I saw pictures of it. It was pretty devastating. The water was up to where the floor of the Methodist church there in Dania, up to the 2nd floor. Come all the way up almost to US 1.
What about the hurricane of 1935? Do you have any memories?
Yeah, a little bit, not much. My dad was building Road 84, and I remember he was out all night working out there. Couldn't get in. He got as far as Davie, and the trees blew in front and back of him. He spent the night in the Sterling home. Morning he come in, I was down at the bank building in Hollywood. I was waiting for him. They had these wooden totem poles up on there the Indians had made. They're blowing out in the street, and I was going out and get a couple of them. But he caught me and brought me back to the bank building.
So the totem poles were on top of the bank building.
Yeah, they were made out of
The Indians had carved
Yeah.
them, and you wanted them, but your father wouldn't let you keep them?
Well, he wouldn't let me keep them. Furthermore, he didn't want me getting them out there. They were still blowing off, and I was going to stand in the door waiting for him to come, because he'd been out all night with trucks and stuff on when he was building 84, Road 84.
Your father was a builder, wasn't he?
Road builder. Little everything, mechanic, anything you needed.
How about the hurricane of 1938? Do you have any memories of that?
Not much of that one. It was just a wind.
How about 1950?
Quite a bit. The bridge at Hallover blew out. I was the last one across the old original Hallover Bridge. I was down there by Ford. We were playing on the bridge, running back and forth, watching the waves break over. We was like surfers waiting for the surf. You come over the top. We'd turn around and go back and wait. Cop come up and say, "You boys have played long enough." Okay, get out here. We left and the bridge fell in right behind us. So they had to build a new bridge. If we'd have been a couple more times, we wouldn't be here, probably.
Wow. How about the hurricane of 1960?
That was a lot of rain and water. I was out here. I had a business just started then. I was out there at Ravenswood, Griffin area. It was just a good wind.
As long as we were speaking about the 1960 era, do you have any memories of the Cuban Missile Crisis during President Kennedy's?
Yeah, 63. They all brought all the Marines and the Army down the railroad here. Freight cars with guns and everything on it. Ready. We were ready. He wasn't going to go far. We'd have probably, the island been devastated, I'm sure. Kennedy was, I disagreed with him, but he was a good president as far as didn't take any baloney.
You know, during World War II, the tomato festivals were canceled.
Yes.
Okay, so do you have some memories of World War II? What was that like?
Well, the Navy come in here and built an airport right here at the air base overnight almost. Everybody worked here 40, 80 hours a day, right around the clock. They built Naval Air Base Fort Lauderdale. And the port was dredged open. They had a net across Port Everglades. I used to go up and watch them pull a net to let the submarines in and out. And the ships go in the port. You couldn't get in Port Everglades.
Were they doing blackouts?
Oh, yeah. You had your headlights taped off to about an inch. And all the street lights were out.
Was there a food shortage?
Somewhat, yes. You didn't get chocolate, you couldn't get, and good steak was hard to come by.
Do you have a story about a cow?
Oh, I bought a cow for $25, butchered it, and sold it to a grocery store. I won't call names, but he's probably passed. I'll call him anyway. Mr. Cook in Hollywood. He had a country store. Went down there to sell it to him, and he wouldn't buy it because too many kids along. It was black market. So I took it down to the ice house and put it in the ice house. 2 or 3 days I had to get it out. He had no money to keep paying. So I went in and drug that cow out. 2 of us, Johnny Sessa and I, we drug that cow out. Sold it to another store up here in Blacktown, we call it in those days. They bought it from us.
Did you make
4 cartons of cigarettes and $8.
Good.
Didn't smoke, so I had the $8. And Johnny didn't want to keep it because he got scared. So I stuffed it in my shoes for about 2 or 3 days. Rolled it all up in money. Walked around hurting my toes so they didn't want nobody to know I had it.
You were hiding your money in your shoes.
Mm-hmm. Went to school with it stuffed up in the end of my shoes. Toilet paper stuffed.
A lot of people may not know this about polio, but could you tell that story?
Well, Armin Dennis wrote. His wife was a cousin of Franklin D. Roosevelt, which he was a polio victim. Dania had a chimpanzee farm, which he supported through his research. That's where the discovery of polio was discovered, right here in Dania. They had nurses come in. I had a gas station across the street, belonged to the mayor. I was working for him then. And I'd watch these nurses. They were in there every day doing experimental. Had like little log cabins built. It was a Indian trading post right on the canal. The Indians originally come out of the Everglades, bring their ware up here to the Dania Cutoff Canal to sell it on US 1. So it became an Indian trading post.
So where was that exactly located, the chimpanzee farm?
Right at the, where the transformer farm's at Griffin Road, Old Griffin, and US 1. Right, Dockers is on the south side of the canal, and it was on the north.
And how many chimpanzees did they have in that farm?
Many, I can't tell you.
What did they do with them?
They were used.
It was all for research.
Research. And they had them that was before the days of Disney, so people come to Miami to have anything to do. You didn't have, the only way out of here was US 1. So everybody stopped, and I had the gas station on one side and they were on the other. They stopped and had their car serviced to go back north. I had to sign up free ice water because cars didn't have air conditioning. Everybody wanted ice water. So I had an ice machine, kept them people drinking pretty well.
And buying your gas too, right?
Buying gas, oil, and service their cars.
You know, I wanted to go back to World War II because I had a question about your father was a locomotive engineer
Port Everglades.
In Port Everglades. And tell the story about how he got sugar, because there was a shortage of sugar.
Oh, you couldn't buy sugar. It was the raw sugar come in from Cuba in the freight cars in bulk. They just put it in there like you have a dump truck or so and pour it in there. So he'd take the locomotive and he'd slam the cars. And the other guy'd run alongside and hold the bucket under the doors. So they'd get enough sugar to bring home. We made fudge out of it. He made the best fudge in the country. Oh. The regular domestic sugar, we wouldn't make fudge. It wouldn't harden. You take that raw sugar, it was first class. We had candy coming up. You can't believe it.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the teachers that you knew growing up as a child. And one of your teachers was named Mrs. Pitts. She was in the 9th and 10th grade.
Pitts.
Tell me about Mrs. Pitts.
She was a nice lady. I was just starting to straighten up a little bit by that time. I got in the 9th grade. I had found out I couldn't drop out because my uncle had a big boot on my butt.
Your uncle did not want you to drop out of school?
No, he dropped out in the 6th grade. He said I was not quitting.
And which uncle was that?
C.F. Hill. He made a lot of money here.
He was a great role model for you, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Tell me a little bit about him.
He was just hard-headed like me, and he'd tell you something, you'd stand by it. If he told you he was going to do it, you better believe he'd do it. And we bought that car for his girlfriend. He gave it to me. And I went down and paid that $75 and got it and drove it a while, sold it, paid $1,700 for it and sold it for $2,500. So then I bought a Jeep for $542 and sold it for $850. So I was just always...
You were on your way.
I was always doing things.
How did your uncle make his fortune?
On real estate, basically. We bought the 5 acres over here by the Danians. And right at the end of World War II, I was the last one to farm that with tomatoes. It would grow bigger than golf balls. The salt were in them. They weren't marketable. They didn't go up like so. So I said to him one day, he come back from World War II, and I said, Ron Huber's crazy. He wants $500 for that 5 acres. He said, let's buy it. I said, you out of your mind. I only got $350. Loan it to me. I loaned it to him, borrowed $150 from my grandmother. He went and bought an Army truck surplus. He and I went over picking a shovel, started digging the marl out and loading it and selling it up. We built the roads at Narmy Isles up in Narmy and Fort Lauderdale, Las Olas Parkway, all the roads up there. He and I with that dump truck and the marl out of the 5 acres. Sold it to Bill Brook, the landscaper. Wonderful. Commodore Brook.
I wanted to ask you about another teacher you had, Pearl Dinkins.
The old meanie.
She was a meanie.
Yes, she was. I doubt if anybody here would remember that. She had beat you with a 1x4.
Did she beat you with a 1x4?
A few times. Once was just practice. The second time I didn't like it, and third I was over. She won.
She won. You told me Mrs. Becker took no prisoners.
Oh no, Mrs. Becker was tough.
What did she teach?
English, 8th grade. She was good to me though. I had to be good to her. She was big.
What about Mrs. Janie McCombs?
Nice lady, but she was too young for teaching a 17-year-old boy.
Did you guys gave her a hard time?
Didn't we? She went home crying most of the time.
Oh, she was a lovely Southern belle, wasn't she?
She was the best.
Tell me about Mrs. Olson. In fact, Olson Middle School is named for her.
I know about her.
Yeah, tell me.
She grabbed me by the collar and wound it up like this. Charles, when are you going to grow up? She beat the fire alarm. It says break glass in case of fire. The alarm went off. She said, what are we going to do? You go that way, I'm going this way. I went to see the fire truck.
Didn't she tell you something, Mrs. Olson? She said you could be what?
President of the United States. I told her, no, I didn't like them Yankee girls. Little blonde up front, she was flirting with me all the time, and I didn't like them girls in the 8th grade. We couldn't buy chewing gum right after the war. So one morning I got in and bought a pack of chewing gum. I got all chewed up. Choom, right in her blonde hair.
And didn't you tell Mrs. Olson that you didn't want to be president of the United States?
I'm
but
going to be
you
the mayor
did?
of Dania Beach, or Dania. It wasn't Beach.
At then it was Dania, yeah.
Be the mayor of Dania. I'm not being no president of the United States.
And you did in fact become the mayor
A couple of
6
times,
times.
3, 4, 5.
6 times. You know, when you were young, you had a lot of childhood illnesses. They didn't have vaccines back then, did they?
I had whooping cough, chicken pox, measles, you name it, I guess. Besides the flu all the time or something. We always had something.
But you survived it all.
Oh, the Sessas, I ate a lot of garlic with the Sessa brothers. They were across the street.
And they were from
Italy.
Italy.
The family was Italy. They were from Cicero, Chicago.
Now, there was a certain period of time in the history of Dania Beach when the Italians moved into this city. Is that correct?
Yes, it's called Little Italy. Down Sheridan Street, right in that area, was called Little Italy. And the Adidas, the Sessas, the Olivas, and so on.
Around what year was that, do you know?
Oh, in the 30s and 40s, early 40s.
And how did the residents of Dania Beach feel about the Italians moving into the city?
Didn't like it. We were tomato farmers. The Salvinos come from Davie. They come out of Chicago into Davie, and they moved to Dania. But they all become, Frank Salvino become mayor here a few times. We were open. We adjusted.
And you did, in fact, become very close friends with some of
Oh, the
those
Salvinos
families.
and Sessas couldn't be better friends.
Now, when you went to Dania High School, it was grades 1 through,
12.
and approximately how many students?
550 when I was in the first grade total, 1 through 12.
And then when did Dania High School become South Broward High School?
1938.
Now, you, when you were in school studying math, you didn't really have a good time. Can you tell me why?
Well, I'd worked with my dad in the garage, and 1-2 was half inch. He said, give me a half-inch wrench, I'd give it to him. You know, 3/4 was 3/4, so I'd give him a 3/4. So 5/16 didn't make nothing to me. So 1 through 10 didn't make much sense. 1-2 was okay, 3/4 was okay. Beyond that, I was lost.
You were ahead with your fractions.
Yeah, the teacher says Junior needs help in numbers. Show him our first grade report card.
You were very industrious, and you ran a lot of errands for the neighborhoods, didn't you?
Sure did.
And so you would be, there was nothing for you to go 3 miles round trip to buy a loaf of bread for someone.
No.
And how much did a loaf of bread cost
10
at that
cents
time?
I bought the cheap bread. It was 15 cents she'd give me, so I tried to always have a nickel left so I could buy something.
And you told me that when you were running errands, you would always try to pick up things like hubcaps to resell.
They come off the cars. The old big hubcaps would fly off the cars going down these rock roads and bumpy roads. So I was always in the grass looking. So I'd sell them at the gas station up here by the canal for 10 cents a piece to buy a pound candy bar.
What was the name of that gas station at that time?
Oliver Attaway's.
Was it on Federal Highway in the canal?
Yes, on the north side.
Okay, and then you eventually...
I operated it for Leonard Brooke, the mayor.
How much was gas then, a gallon? Do you recall?
About 19 cents. And it went to 42 cents. I had a picture. I was going to bring it in here, but 42 cents in 86.
Now, Dania Beach had a movie theater at one time, did it not?
2.
2 movie theaters. And where were they located and what were they named?
The Dania Theater was on the east side. The State Theater was right in there in front of the post office now.
So if you went to the movies, what would you pay at that time for a bag of popcorn?
Nickel.
Or candy, a candy bar?
Nickel. The movie was 9 cents in Hollywood and 14 at the Florida Theater. That's high class. 9 cents is a cheap movie, Cowboys and Indians.
Do you remember any of those movies you watched when you were a child?
Yeah, Lone Ranger.
You liked The Lone Ranger?
Well, Tom Mix and all them good ones.
Oh, that's good. Did you have a radio at home, like a floor radio?
Yeah, the thing was a pain in the butt. It didn't work half the time.
So you didn't really listen to the radio?
No, I made it where I could put my head in a pillow and sleep there under it.
How old were you when you got your first bike?
About 4.
And what did your parents do with it?
Hung it on the wall because I couldn't ride it.
So you couldn't ride it, or until you could ride
Well,
it?
I could. Well, it was too short for me. So then I brought it down later. Maybe I was 5 or 6, and all the neighbors, they didn't have bikes either, so they all come on and rode my bike.
And sometimes more than one person would be on that bike.
Oh, Johnny and Ralph Sesson, I rode the same bike every day. I'd sit on the back, and Johnny sit on the seat, and Ralph would sit on the handlebars and say this way or that. And if we didn't go that way, he'd knock hell out of both of us, and here we go again.
And when you were about 8 years old, you were very close to Johnny Sessa, and his mother had a vegetable garden. And so she used to pay you to weed her vegetable garden.
Yes, she did.
What would she pay you?
About 3 cents for a whole strip, about an acre going one way, and then 3 cents the other, and give you a clothespin colored. So Johnny and I couldn't swap her. Ralph couldn't take them. If he had my green ones or red ones, he had a clothespin with that number on it.
Well, she had you boys figured out.
Oh yeah, she knew us. She was tough.
So
Good lady.
And when you went to the movies with Johnny Sessa, how much was it to get into the movies?
9 cents at the Ritz. Florida was 14.
Now you had a little red wagon. You told me a story.
Sure did. Got me in a lot of trouble.
Tell me about it.
Well, Johnny and I, when his dad would come back from his stepfather, with their vegetables they didn't sell, he'd take them, dump them out in the sand field there. We'd go get them and hose them off, wash them up and rinse them out. Get that red wagon loaded up with greens and go over to the black area and sell them for a nickel a bunch.
Like mustard greens and
mustard, collards, turnips, whatever.
When did you start to first experience Dania Beach growing? You were a young child. When did you start to see things changing?
World War II.
And what did you notice?
Well, more people here and more different things to do.
And what were those different things?
Well, you done more mechanical, building truck bodies for the farmers. You rebuilt cars and things. There's more people here to use the things. Originally, you had a handful of maybe 6 or 8 families, and that was pretty much it. If you weren't related into that family, you were a nobody. And I was a nobody.
You said it was a very close-knit town. Yeah. And you could even go to the beach and have a fire on the beach and cookouts.
Oh, many times do that for fun. Take all the lettuce crates out there and set them on fire.
And when you were 6 years old, the fire alarm went off in the city of Dania Beach, and no one could find the fire truck. Where was it?
Over in Chris's garage. George Land had the spark plugs out of it. He was working on it, tuning it up.
So
the house burned to the ground. They saved a lot.
And the city didn't only had, you told me, a volunteer fire department. They didn't have
they had a city clerk, which was your fireman. He'd get on the fire truck as soon as the whistle blew, and he'd blow the siren on top of the water tank. All the volunteers would run towards the station to see where it was at. Then you'd go to the fire.
And what did they charge you to put the fire out?
They paid the firemen $2 for a grass fire and $5 for a house fire.
And when did that change, do you think?
When these guys started flipping the cards for each other. They weren't showing up, half of them. Everybody was getting paid, only a few were showing up.
So in the beginning, not everybody was paid. Like you told me, John Hanson was the first paid city manager.
One of the Hansons, yes. John, John.
So that was considered a community service at that time.
Yes.
Before they started paying. And Mrs. McCombs, the teacher we spoke of, her husband was also a city commissioner. Is that correct?
Yes, Eugene, Carol's father.
Okay. Do you have any memories of him, Eugene?
Quite a bit. He was always kept a nice Mercury car, kept it well polished. I want one like it. He's a little bit older than I was, 4 or 5 years, I think. He was a nice man, very nice.
Who were the paid firemen? Billy, Brooke, and Bobo Hanson?
They were 2 natives.
Can you tell me anything about that?
Well, Billy and I grew up together. We were partners in business, the trucking, well drilling, and whatever. And Bobo Hanson, he worked for Meekins later as a truck driver, concrete mixer man. It was all good people. Everybody here, there were no bad people in Dania.
There still aren't.
There are very few.
What about Prohibition? Do you know anything about Prohibition and what happened in Dania Beach during Prohibition?
Only what I heard. I was too young.
What
My
did
dad
you hear?
made whiskey on Frost Island over there in West Lake.
Where Westlake Park is now?
Yeah, in there. He had a canvas canoe. He used to fold it up and put it under his arm.
And hide the whiskey in the canvas canoe?
He'd make it in a barrel or in a 5-gallon jug. He'd bring it over and they put it in the car. My mom would put her dress over it. They go sell it over here at Collins grocery store in Blacktown.
You have been an entrepreneur for most of your life, but there were times when you didn't have much money. For instance, when you were first married and it was Christmas.
Tell me. I went to Salvation Army and bought toys for my son for Christmas. I had bought an electric train for him. I cleaned it all up, polished it, painted a bicycle for my daughter. Made him look like new. That's the way of life.
You've been amazingly entrepreneurial in your life. You know, you've done what you had to do. And
I never slowed down.
What kind of advice would you give young people today who are just starting out?
Don't give up, hard work. Use all the knowledge you have, the best of it, and it'll come out for you. But if you sit back and don't do, you're going no place. You've got to do things. You know, I've still got a ways to go yet. I'm still climbing.
Do you have some thoughts about how we could improve Dania Beach today and into the future?
Well, the main thing is keeping it clean, keep people wanting to come here. Keep the streets and the neighborhoods looking as good as possible. And main thing is to attract, see, the old chimpanzee farm used to attract people to stop here. Some would look around, some would get out here as quick as they could. Because we were basically, back then, we were tomato people. And we didn't want anybody here. Wanted us to pick tomatoes. If you didn't pick tomatoes, get out of here.
So are you saying if we had an attraction, it might be a good thing for the city?
It depends on the attraction, some things. We had the girly shows, was pretty good for a while.
What about gambling? Did we ever have gambling in Dania Beach?
Not legally, we had it. Had plenty of it. Right here at Dania Beach, next to the beach road, the old Dania Bar was one of the main gambling houses.
Really?
One down there at Italian restaurant down the street here. What's the name of it?
Lorenzo's?
Yeah, that was a big gambling hole.
Really?
Back in the 60s. I was campaigning, didn't know it, went in knocking on the doors looking for votes.
And they were in there gambling?
Shook them up. They had to shoo me right out of there now. Police chief was in there.
You told me once that Dania Beach was the last city in Broward County to really give up its prejudice against black people. And maybe you could tell me a little bit about how that evolved in your lifetime, what you saw.
Well, I saw a lot of things that I didn't agree with some, and some maybe I did. I didn't believe in abusing no one. I don't care what your color is, or your animal, or anything. I'm pretty ornery, but if you treat me fair, I'll treat you the same or better.
Can you tell me about how you built your business and what it is today?
Well, I started off with one small tow truck, which I still have today. I bought it in '56 for $750. I stole the money out of the cash register, my own cash register, so my wife wouldn't know it. And took $150 gasoline shrinkage check and went down and bought one of Stewart's tow trucks here in Dania.
And how many tow trucks do you have today?
About 30. And I bought the first one from J.T. Stewart, and then I bought him out in '91.
And how many children do you have?
3.
And how many grandchildren?
7.
And do you have great-grandchildren?
About 5.
Really? That's wonderful.
I got a couple of extras, but that's okay. I adopted them.
And how would you like them to, what is the legacy you would like to leave for them? How would you like them to remember you?
As a hard-working person and adventurous, making things work. I want them to do the same. We've always had good times. Like I have a race car outside now. My son drives that one. I raced with the best of them at one time with Banjo Matthews, Fireball Roberts. And the big ones, I went to Indy one year and didn't qualify in 1951. I was 19 years old. I was watching TV one day and they said the guy's 19. I said, what the hell's he doing there? And I thought, oh, well, I was there at 19. I was up there with Pure Oil Company then. I worked for them, and I was a hot dog driver local. So they sent me to Indianapolis, but I didn't make it. You had to qualify at 134, and I went 127 in a real race car. So they bumped me out. Goodbye, boy. Come back when you grow up.
And also, you told me that you never got your airline pilot's license until you were in your 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So how were you able to fly all those years without a license?
I flew more without a license than I ever did with one. Just like driving a truck. You got in and get your butt in the seat and go.
And how old were you when you first flew an airplane?
About 14. I dusted the tomato fields here. I worked for a guy named Joe Basso, Italian out of New Jersey. He had a bad arm and he couldn't do much, but I could load his airplane for him. And I'd watch him take off and land. And finally, Ronnie Neville, another boy, he and I, we grew up out there loading for him. Ronnie flew for Eastern for 37 years, I think, 27 or 30, several years anyway. And I flew bootleg around here. I owned part of Shawnee Airline at one time. Flew right-hand seat. Sometimes they say, where's the captain? I don't know where the captain said, who he is. Who's in the right seat? I don't know. Like Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, who's who?
So you're saying, okay, sometimes it's okay to break the rules if you're not going to hurt anybody, or I mean,
well, not intentionally. Always to make $1, I try a lot of things. I race cars around town too. It was illegal, but we did it.
So is there something else you'd like to say about the city of Dania Beach? And
good place to grow up, the best.
Did we cover everything?
I don't know. No, you'd be another month.
Are there any stories I missed that you want to tell me about Dania Beach?
I'll get in trouble. I got to take the fifth.
Well, is there one statement you would like to make when we close this interview? Is there one thing you would like to say in closing?
Well, I want to thank you for your time and bringing me in, and all the people coming out. It's been great to see them come out. I was surprised so many did come out. And they'll go back and tell a few more, and we'll hear some more stories.
I want to say it's been an honor and a pleasure to interview you today, and I thank you so much for your time, for your graciousness, and for the wonderful things you've done for this city.
Well, I'll never quit as long as I breathe air.